So far, the impact hasn't been that severe. Over the past 2 weeks, we've seen that about 75% of homes scheduled for auction have still had a successful result across Sydney, but the dynamics have changed slightly. So week to week, we're seeing auction volumes are starting to ease across Sydney, and more deals are getting done prior to the actual auction event. So I think where we have these virtual auctions, there is some uptake, but ultimately lockdown conditions show that auctions become deals that are done prior to or after the event, more commonly than we usually see in the auction market.
Do you expect to see a paring back of sales as the Sydney lockdown and the uncertainty continues?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it really depends how long lockdowns last. Historically, we've seen with our data that through circuit breaker lockdowns, which last a few days to maybe a couple of weeks, there really isn't much impact on the property market. Transaction activity slows, but it bounces right back. And that's because both buyers and sellers know it's not an ideal time to participate in the property market, and they sort of come back once lockdowns have eased. Where that dynamic starts to change is where lockdowns are extended. So like we saw through stage 2 restrictions nationally last year, or in Melbourne last year as well, over time, demand starts to ease, and if people can't keep up with their home loan repayments, we might start to see more supply come onto the market. Now, the reason that didn't really happen last year was because you had things like mortgage repayment deferrals, income support, that stopped an excess of distressed supply coming onto the market.
Against expectations at the start of the pandemic last year, prices have been soaring in all cities. Will this lockdown in Sydney start to see a reversal of its house price trajectory?
So I think at the start of the last pandemic, we really underestimated the institutional response from the RBA, the government, even major banks offering home loan mortgage repayment deferrals. So last year, when there were expectations that there was going to be a peak to trough decline of around 10% in the property market, Australia's housing market only had a decline of 2.1%. And look, realistically, a 3-week lockdown is probably not going to have much impact on demand and create a reduction in prices, especially with the market as hot as it is. What I would say, though, is that we have this Delta variant in Australia now. I think it's a little uncertain how long we can go into lockdown, how frequently we would be going into lockdown. And where we see extended periods of lockdown, you would need to have that same level of institutional support in order to keep the housing market stable. ABS data last year showed us that the majority of people receiving JobKeeper were homeowners with mortgage obligations. So that does have an impact on the stability of the housing market. If you don't have income coming through, you've still got mortgage repayments to make and the government support isn't there.